So we were just talking about how this past weekend you went to that seminar down in Florida, advertised as the clinic, as we've seen on the socials and on Simplifaster, kind of some ads there. Some pretty big dogs. We had Les Spellman, Tony Holler, Tony Villani, and then Joey G, who's been blowing up lately. We were talking a little bit about it before we started recording, but man, what were your initial thoughts heading down there? Maybe you could kind of recap that fun airport story that you were kind of just sharing with us a little bit too.
Honestly, the nicest part about moving to Florida is the fact that I am been able to drive to 3 different clinics, and everybody tries to come to Florida.
Yeah.
So that's been super nice, not having to fly everywhere.
That's a great point. Yeah.
So on the way over there, I got to pick up Joe Stokowski and Andrew Sugg at the airport. I'd never met Andrew beforehand, but Joe, with all of his charts and stuff that he puts on Twitter with the pounds per square inch, and he's got a Simplifaster article just breaking down the 40. That's really interesting, and that kind of got my ball rolling as far as the pounds per square inch. But picking them up at the airport, Joe called me. He's like, "Hey man, I got this other guy that's going to the clinic. Do you care if he rides with you?" Sure, why not? And then turns out Andrew had interned at Liberty under Dom for a semester, which obviously we've all been at Liberty at some point. So yeah, super small world. They were good dudes, but got breakfast with them, talked a little shop. It was good to ask Joe some questions on that pounds per square inch chart, because I know at least with my kids at the high school level, I'm like, none of my kids are going to be at the top of this chart ever. I don't even know how a high school kid gets to these like numbers that are way outrageous compared to what I'm seeing. Like all my kids are around, I think the chart goes up to, well, it depends on how fast you run, but maybe like a 6, something 7, something crazy on the high end. And most of my kids are like a 2 on it. And it factors in their height and their weight. And you're looking at 2.1 for most of my kids. My higher kids I have are like 3.0, a couple 3.1s, 3.2s, but like the 3.0 is a kid that is 6'2", 220. And so that kind of puts perspective as far as on the pounds per square inch. But yeah, picked them up, had some breakfast, showed. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. But can you explain that chart for a little bit for anyone who might not have seen it before?
Yeah, so that pounds per square inch chart, if you look up Joe's stuff on Simplifaster, he's got an article out on it. But with that chart, it basically has miles per hour, how fast a kid runs on the top side. And then in a kind of a grid format, it takes, to find the pounds per square inch, you're going to take their body weight and then divide it by their height in inches to get the pounds per square inch. And then that number kind of fits in on the grid somewhere based off of their miles per hour on their fly time, whatever their fastest miles per hour is. And with Joe's chart, I break it up into tiers. When he references it, he talks about colors. I just do tiers 1 through 7. And the most dominant teams are basically filled with kids that are in tier 3 and 4, 3, 4, 5, and then 6 and 7. If you've got a 7 kid, then you need to call every Division I program and let them know who you have in your backyard. But your dominant high school kids or teams are going to be filled with tiers 3s, 4s, and 5s. And then your elite kids are at the top side. But you're going to have a bunch of kids that are in the 1s and 2s for an average high school athlete. And it's been super helpful for me and with the football coaches, because it's giving them a number to look at physical potential that's not a bench press, a squat, or whatever. It's now factoring in body size and how fast they run. So it's giving them this number that's like, hey, Bob over here may not be your best linebacker, but you might want to find a way to get him on the field. He might be a better option at a defensive end than linebacker because of X, Y, and Z. So it's a really good way to rank what I'll call the physical potential of your kids and to kind of give that neutral outlook versus sometimes coaches can get kind of biased on the kids they work with of, I like this kid more or less, and I don't necessarily look at this other kid, but turns out he's got a lot more physical potential.
I like that.
Yeah, it's been our football coaches really liked it.
I'm gonna need to pick your brain. I'm gonna need to pick your brain more on that because I have a bunch of good data for heights, weights, and sprinting with the 1080. So just look, I pulled up Joe's article here, and like I have athletes that I know have poor acceleration, but better top end speed, so to speak. So it'll be interesting to look at some of that and bounce ideas off of you.
Yeah, and I think you'd have to look at. I think you'd have to look at your top tier would be NHL guys at the end of the day, like getting their heights and weights and seeing where everybody fits to then see how it compares to Division I club and all that stuff. I'd be curious too with your kids on ice.
Yeah.
So I was going to say, you might be surprised with hockey. I think it might just be a different animal on the ice because there's so many like visual variables, I think, that tie into hockey.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, just the skill of what's going on during the game. It's like anything, but just because you're the fastest doesn't mean you're going to be the best. Yeah, for sure.
Nice.
So all that went down before you even got to the clinic there, Ross. So what else? What other good insights do you have for us? What were big takeaways or the big kind of rocks that stood out to you?
Yeah, so we showed up at this essentially giant warehouse where Villani trains out of and where this gym is at. And it's essentially a bunch of different businesses in one. And then there's this gym located in it. Like there was a youth basketball game and all this stuff going on. So we go in and obviously start talking to a bunch of coaches. It was pretty cool because at least I got to meet a bunch of dudes that I hadn't met in person and interacted with on Twitter and different things a lot. So that was cool to talk to them and connect there a little bit. And then beforehand, they had a couple guys just NFL guys, and just talking about Tony and taking some Q&As and things like that. So that was pretty cool. Then Tony got up and talked for a little bit. Obviously, he talked about feed the cats and that whole mantra. And then it was Les, and then Joey G, and then Tony spoke at the end. Tony's was actually pretty good in that he had, I think it was more of like I've heard that presentation a bunch of times now, and so he had a couple little nuggets. I thought that were pretty good. I mean, he broke down his rules of feed the cats and then kind of the hows of it, which is kind of essentially how we train at this point. His big rules were winning, making it fun, building apex predators, having healthy athletes, and then never let today ruin tomorrow. And then he broke down his, the hows of it, the little details. The one detail that I liked that I hadn't necessarily heard from him before was his don't chase the 10, which is basically you're not going to be able to get a 10 a 10 out of 10 every single day. Like if you ask somebody how they're feeling, they're going to say that I'm a 7 out of 10 today. Like it just never happens. It's a 10 out of 10 is super rare. So if you're shooting for 7 out of 10, you're going to be a lot happier than trying to shoot for a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, I think I've seen him write that in a couple articles, but I like that.
Yeah, and then there's his.
Yeah, that's a good point.
He didn't break down. I know you asked. He didn't break down the atomic workout. He's just got that listed on YouTube, and that was kind of good to watch. It was good to see that video to kind of put it in perspective, because it's basically a bunch of front side mechanic stuff. Well, front side mechanic, plyo, to then basically prime times and sprints. But it was a good, quick drill to get them fired up for spring. So I like that a lot. I think what I liked about that with that atomic workout is that it kind of put it all in one. And what I mean by that is it broke it down into, hey, in 15 minutes you can work on speed, and I can put that anywhere, whether it's my workout, whether it's a coach's workout, it doesn't matter. You can easily find 15 minutes a couple times a week to do it.
So the atomic workout, just because it's been a while, but I know I've read it, it was 10 5-second exercises or movements or whatever, right? And then 2 like 40-yard sprints separated by 5 minutes. Yeah, you can crank that out.
Separated the sprints by 5 minutes, but 40-yard sprints.
So going with Cal Dietz's skill optimization window article on XL Athlete, do we feel like we are personally doing that right now within our own workouts, right, in some capacity? Like, are you guys starting with some sort of speed drills in your warm-ups that eventually lead into kind of like your lifting? Like, are we already doing mini atomic workouts? Or as I'm saying this, or as you're reading that, does that kind of make you think like, oh, why can't we incorporate some of these drills in our warm-ups and then have some sort of, whatever measured or tested? Because that's kind of where my mind went, not only for us in a weight room or on the field, but also telling our coaches like, hey, the first 10 minutes of your practices are already crap. Here's something that you can kind of do to enhance it or make it better.
Yeah, I've spent a little bit of time doing something close to that, but not as much as maybe I should. And I guess the field work I want to spend more time on and less time in the weight room, more sprinting. But as far as the warm-up goes, the last couple of years, I've included, I always start with some breathing and some OBs and things like that, but maybe I'm spending too much time on those. And I've always included some kind of dynamic movement, but then, you throw in some A skips and whatever, do that, and then a few sprints, and then it's into the weight room. That's always been the thing I've been doing the last couple of years. But maybe not as clearly organized and as much time spent on the sprinting aspect as I think I want to move toward.
Mm-hmm. You got the sunshine down there, Ross. What's it look like for you?
I don't necessarily do that on the warm up every day. If I do field work outside, well, obviously field work's outside. If I go outside, then I'll throw that in the warm up. If I'm inside, I will pretty much, my kids do prime times almost every day. They're doing some sort of pogo jump, and then some sort of sprinting. Now I like with what Tony talked about, when Les spoke, it cleared up a lot of things for me as far as how do we progress teaching sprint mechanics, and like where do we start? And naturally the front side mechanics is pretty big, but for me the part where Les cleared things up was like, all right, we need to start with the vertical, being able to unload vertically before we're worried about going horizontal. So when I say vertical, I just mean we're worried about posture and keeping that, which is obviously front side mechanics. And that is what all these drills do. Mm-hmm. So that really circled it for me. So I think that if you're implementing those front side drills like Tony's got, the fast march, A-skip, and the high knees, and you're doing it in that way, I mean, it's going to be well worth your time, and it's super easy to do and make it part of your warm-up versus like I do the football warm-up now, and versus, doing 50 hamstring stretches in a row. We're doing different things to get the running mechanics dialed.
No, I like that. That's interesting. Like starting with the down the field stuff and the posture versus acceleration, like what you need to do to get into it.
Ross, did they talk about posture at all?
Yeah. So Les was talking about, again, starting with vertical, aka just posture, and then which is not specific to Excel. But if I can't hold posture, then when I'm trying to accelerate, I can't hold a straight line. And I can't hold the angles of the shin and the body when I'm driving if I can't hold posture vertically. And that really clicked for me, because otherwise that wouldn't have made sense. It's so, again, you're hammering that in your warm up, and it's just a little easy thing to do. And with the vertical emphasis, then Les was talking about, that's then where we're working on like our overhead drills, whether it's a PVC pipe overhead, hands are overhead, things like that, because we're working the core, we're working the psoas and posture that way. And that was something I know, and obviously Chris, you've done that way more than I have, where yes, you have told me why, and I've had other people tell me why we do these overhead drills, but that connection for me made it make the most sense of anything that I've personally heard.
Yeah, it's a weird thing, but yeah, it makes sense, right? The overhead posture, the way I have it explained is, if you're holding something overhead, you can't wiggle your hips as much side to side. It just kind of locks you sort of in. And if you're reaching up, you can't be leaning forward a ton. And kind of that pushing max speed stride, which we don't want, kind of turns you into that pulling max speed stride, which we do want. So with Les's stuff, putting posture kind of first and posture as the premium, did he talk about what he would do or he does in the weight room to kind of work on that, right? Blair up in Boston, me in Virginia, we don't always have the ability to get outside. So did he give some drills or thoughts about stuff to work on not on the field?
Yeah, so he didn't go into weight room stuff really. So I didn't realize is that he interned or worked under or with Dan Paff for a while, and that was one of his mentors, which made everything make a lot more sense with him. And so, but no, he didn't talk about weight room stuff. It was more, how can you make a system for developing speed, both acceleration and max velocity. And with a huge line that he said, or that I really liked, was powerful outcomes are delayed. And that's something that was personally, again, it stuck out for me. Powerful outcomes are delayed, and that, okay, I got to think several weeks ahead or months ahead, or whatever I got going on these big stimuluses, when these people are really going to see it come to fruition. Because that's when he got to talking about the learning curve the motor learning process, and that The typical motor learning process is, right, I got my cognitive where I'm just picking it up. Associative, I'm kind of learning and figuring it out. And then autonomous, after that, I don't need to think about it, which is great if I've never done it before and I haven't learned that skill and been doing it a billion times, like trying to reteach somebody how to skate. Okay, well, now I got to go back. Like if I'm teaching acceleration, all right, I got to go from autonomous. I got to think about what I'm doing to cognitive. I got to be slower. I'm going to look worse and it's going to feel terrible, to then climb my way back up. And that's going to take time and a lot of trust and that type of deal. And that was something he was hammering with that. And then the other part for him was determining, all right, what do I need to measure? What can I automate? And then what can I optimize? So what are the tests we need to do in order to find the answers I need to have, versus just testing the test. And then with that, make it as automatic as I can. And then obviously optimize that process back and forth. I guess, Chris, to kind of somewhat answer your question, is the three big questions that he's going to ask for any kid is, are they fast? Okay, yes or no. Where are they not fast? So are they not fast beginning, middle, end, essentially? And determining where they're not fast, all right, then I need to develop the stimulus for that. So whether it's first step out, the first 5 steps, whatever it may be, determine that's the stimulus I need to have. And then why are they not fast at that spot? So is it because of a physical reason? Is it because of a weight room type of deal or an output reason? Or is it because of a technical reason, like a form issue, like a posture issue? So just depends, I guess, how you break that down.
Yeah, that helps and that makes sense, because the main metric I'm looking at for speed is 10-meter sprint, right? So an unresisted 10-meter sprint, and then I try to break it down from there. And I like looking at the 0 to 5, 5 to 10 meters split, but I also like seeing how far can they get in 1 second. And like, it shouldn't be a surprise that the person that gets furthest in 1 second, right, has the best acceleration, sort of wins the race. What I'm stuck on right now is somebody doesn't get far in 1 second. Is that a lack of strength? A lack of technique? Is it just bad body composition? And so what I'm trying to figure out is, can I set these things up to start to eliminate that? So for example, I recently tweeted out a picture of somebody who had a bad left foot, right? So you could see with the 1080, the like power leak. So their first step, right foot lands very stiff. Second step, left foot lands, and the heel kind of collapses. All right, so I know he has a weak left foot, but sometimes I can't see other people's weak foot. Right, so if you have a weak foot, you're not going to project out as far. And then, are you just weak? Do you lack isometric strength? Because that kind of helps you in early acceleration. And then too, like, do you just have bad body composition? Like, is there an ideal muscle mass, body fat percentage, height to weight ratio for good acceleration?
That isometric strength is going to have a big factor into the posture too, especially sprinting.
Yeah. So I like it. There's a lot of things to pull apart there. I'll have to dive in a little bit more on his stuff and kind of see his the way that he profiles and groups athletes.
Yeah, and
with that. Yep, go ahead.
So the other
There's
part that
a lot
was a
to digest.
reoccurring, the other part that was reoccurring, and that seems to be reoccurring not just from Les, but from a lot of the coaches, and even the coaches that spoke, all 4 of them actually, is at the end of the day, you got to get them fast first. Like that's what it needs to be. So like, don't look anywhere. Well, I don't want to say don't look. It's focus in on getting them fast first, and whatever that looks like, then you can kind of worry about the nuance thing. Like Villani's deal of, I want them to be fast first, and then, then we can kind of progress to these other little things, but they need to be fast at the end of the day. And getting that foundational strength or whatever it may be to get them there, that needs to be done first before we really worry about all these other little things.
Say that last part again. We need to get them strong enough to be fast first. Is that what you just said?
I didn't say that exactly, but that sounds good. That sounds really good.
Okay.
Well, it's like, all right, if my kid is getting stronger, because obviously they're not. If he's getting stronger and he's running faster, all right, we're doing great. Now I say that as a caveat because obviously top speed versus acceleration are two different things. But if you're timing enough flies at different distances, whether it's acceleration that's getting better or is it top end speed that's getting better, and is it a little bit of both, right? Are both getting better? It just depends. But getting them strong. I mean, they got to be some sort of strong in the first place, whether we like it or not. And it might be isometrically strong, and it might not be, in our typical movement. Hey, at this kid's split squat might not be the strongest, but isometrically they can hold the most weight at everybody else. Okay, that makes sense.
What do you think the priority is for a young athlete? Spending more time sprinting, like working on that kind of speed to get fast? Not that kind of speed to get fast. Yeah, that makes sense. Or spending more time just working on getting strong. I mean, it doesn't take much when the kid's young to get a little bit stronger, but working on that speed side, where should
Chris,
we
you take this one,
think, guys?
Oh, well, I was hoping that one of your guys there kind of gave the answer. That's what I was looking for, because I basically have the same question, Blair. And my question is, what if they're just bad at everything? Right? Like we all have that athlete who is just super slow, max velocity, super slow in acceleration, and they're just really, really weak. Right? Where do you start? So for me, I've always had the biggest bang for your buck of getting them as strong as possible in the positions and shapes that they are going to get in during a sprint. And I go back to this all the time. I really think that the Cal Dietz style, floating heel, front foot elevated, whatever you want to call it, split squat is the best way to do it. Like, can you hold with just your body weight in the bottom of a split squat for 30 seconds? And then I also like a Chris Corfist inspired, just standing on one leg with your hips in a good position, making sure that your leg on the ground, that hip isn't flared out. So my thing is suck your hip over heel and make sure you could pelvic, tilt or hip hike your opposite hip in the air, because we need a good hip hike as we're going through top speed mechanics. So to me, I think that's kind of the start. Like if they can't hold their body weight in a split squat, if they can't stand on one leg without their hip getting blown out to the side, it just is what it is. You're not going to be fast. And those are kind of my foundations of where I start. Just get them strong in a split squat, get them strong on standing on one leg, and that kind of helps the posture and the positions. It's my thought, but yeah.
So you don't think 3 sets of 10 goblet squats are gonna?
Yeah. No, it's gonna. Yeah. those are necessary with a young athlete or, just someone who's kind of crappy. But I think having them sprint, timing it so they could work on intent, and then, put them in the shapes that we want. So that's what's nice about that floating heel is it's strengthening your foot in the position that it will be in during early acceleration, right? When you're smashing your foot into the ground with as much force as possible, if you could hold it for 30 seconds and then you could add weight on top of that, it's going to enhance the strength of your foot and the positions and the postures and all that. So to me, that's got to be the start. But I've been wrong before in the past, so we'll see. But that's the big question I have is like, did any of these guys this weekend say, hey, if you have someone who tests terrible and everything, start here?
No, they did not. To answer that question,
yeah.
Well, and it was funny, related. When Joey G was talking about doing his field, the different stuff that they're doing, where it's really customizable to position groups, players, strengths, weaknesses, things like that. He was just in the middle of it. He was like, "Look, you high school guys, if you're by yourself, you can't do this. Like, you just can't. Like, it's just not feasible, because I don't have
fair
4 to 5 dudes." And he's like, "You can do, a little bit of it, but it would be very hard to do it to that depth if you don't have some sort of help on the field to help or in the weight room to coach it up." But no, none of them spoke about that. I'll say this from being 1 year into working at a high school and seeing middle school kids through high school kids. I will say that I have shifted a bit since Liberty and working with the college kids in that there is a nice intertwining I think you need to do of working the fundamental strength, but then I'm also jumping them and sprinting them and putting them in those different positions, because I think at least, again, with my school, at least, and the kids that I have, there's a lot of them that aren't the most coordinated, and they're not necessarily playing a bunch of different sports. Like baseball in Florida is the thing, and as we all know, baseball is not this athletic developer, and so I got kids that can catch and throw something, but trying to move, they're not able to, or really able to run. And so I think, again, you've got to intertwine the foundational movement and, yes, the strength work. I mean, I know for my kids, my high school kids that are in my class, the only things that we did, our main movements for literally the entire year was barbell RDLs, trap bar deadlifts, and bench. And then I rotated through 2 or 3 different like unilateral squat variations. So I didn't necessarily hammer squat a ton. I mean, yes, we squatted, but I put them in different situations. But case in point is the 3 measured ones I did are, again, RDL, trap bar deadlift, and bench. And that's all we did. And I just pretty much varied the load throughout the year. But I had kids that would put, on average, it was like 60 pounds on their RDL for the guys for the year, and I had guys with upwards of 100 pounds. Now the 100 pounds is basically because of technical cleanup. Like they went from taking 195 and their backs rounding to now taking 275, 300 for reps and being technically sound. And
crazy.
So you can see the difference. So I think it's important, but I think it's only important if I am doing it with jumps and sprints and things like that. If I'm just doing it by itself, then that's a different deal.
Yeah. Something that you just mentioned and Chris mentioned before too was measuring. And obviously I think that that's a big part of, the big picture as far as getting anyone better, right? if you're not measuring things, and I know I personally think that you measure as good, if not better than anyone, as far as your tracking of
Agreed.
data.
Yeah.
Yeah, without that intent and someone there measuring, there's not going to be as much improvement as there definitely could be. You do a great job of that with all your lifts, your key lifts, and then also
Sure.
your jump collection, and I'm sure sprints. And then Chris, you got the 1080, which is just like, what the heck, man?
Now I'm drowning in data. So every day I'm like, gosh dang it, I need a good nerd to help me with this.
Chris,
So yeah.
with your 1080, obviously I don't have a 1080, and nor does 99% of the population. But
yeah.
Like for me, I just have a Jumpman and I have Dasher, and
Mm-hmm.
those are pretty straightforward metrics. For you in that 1080, and with all the stuff that you're doing, what is like the 1, 2, or 3 key things that you are tracking with that thing? I know it gives you a billion things of information, but
Yeah. So I could go on forever of things that I hope it could track, and I'm gonna experiment like crazy on. Like I'm really, really caught up on this. Can I measure feet with it? So I have some thoughts there maybe for another podcast, but I have just found that the further you can get in 1 second, the better your projection, the better your first couple steps, the better your explosive, whatever we want to call it, the faster you're going to get to 10 meters. And I'm primarily able to measure 10 meters. It fits really well, very safe in the hallway at the ice rink. And so when we're measuring the time to get to 10 and then the distance at 1 second, it lays out a pretty good profile of who's strong enough in the acceleration and then who could kind of make it up in the last half there. I don't feel safe going over 10 meters at the ice rink. And again, that's where we're primarily sprinting. So it keeps it simple. I look at the 10 and then I look at distance at 1 second. And every now and then I'll break out from 0 to 5 and from 5 to 10. But yeah, for as many things as it does, mostly that's what I track and measure. And then I use those times and distances to 1 second to individualize. And that's kind of the power of it. It's a phenomenal testing tool, but the training capabilities with it is pretty awesome too. So if I run a short program, then take a kind of a max on them, then I'll use that to add in a resisted or assisted program. And just like simple, everyone gets better. The intent is super high. It's super specific to the individual for what they need. Yeah, it's solid. So yeah, not to kind of make it sound simple, but I look at the time to 10 meters. I look at the mechanics as they're going too, because that's pretty important. And I look at distance to 1 second. And then too, like it gives a printout of, I could look across that 10 meters, a printout of like their power production, their speed, and their force. And so if I see leaks in power halfway down, so at like meters 4 through 6, I know mechanically something's wrong. So I get a good visual, and then a good time and a good distance to 1 second.
how many in 10 meters, how many steps do your guys usually take?
Oh, good question. It's always different. I'm going to say around 7 to 8.
Okay.
But I could be way off. Yeah.
So Les's other point was that 40% of speed is reached in the first 2 steps, and then
Yep.
80% of your top speed is reached between 3 and 10. So I would just be curious, how quick your guys are getting to 80, right? Again, is it that 8 to 10 or whatever?
So keep in mind too, we won't mention this high schooler's name, but I've done hundreds and hundreds of 10-meter sprints with my men's and women's hockey team, and a high school athlete in the area came in one day and blew them all out of the water on his very, very first ever attempt. So
bet he did.
There's some differences. Again, won't mention the name, but you guys know who I'm talking about. So as much as I love the boys here, we're not land-based athletes. We kind of just put it that way. Yeah. When that kid ran that time, I was like, oh, all right, that's why you are who you are. That makes sense.
That's awesome.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
That's awesome.
But yeah, the step rate and everything, I could definitely look at, but it's amazing to watch how much force decreases within the first 2 steps. It's really step 1, step 2, and then from there, it's all velocity based. It's just shocking when you set the metrics to look at force across the entire sprint. It's nuts.
Ross, what other key takeaways can you pull from the clinic? What else do you have? Anything that stands out?
Yeah,
that you remember?
Yeah. So since Chris was talking about the first 2 steps with less. Like I said, vertical, getting the posture down. Then it was the horizontal aspect of getting the shape down and getting my angles right. Because if I can't, again, posture is going to unlock anything acceleration-wise. If you've got a poor accelerator, they probably have poor posture vertically, which then led to projection, the first 2 steps, and then led to then the resisted accel stuff. Obviously the steps 3 through 10 or so on and so forth. The other interesting part, and a super detailed thing, was by your 7th or 8th step, your shin is vertical. And that was something that I didn't know. But the other point of it was that the torso was still rising at that point, so it's still straightening out. Now it's not bent over and totally out of the way, but it's not upright, completely upright at the same time as the shin. So it was just interesting when they were just talking about teaching your kids not to stand up straight immediately and getting teaching that slow rise as they go. Because I know again, with my kids, and I'm not coaching my kids super hard technique wise. For me, I've just been really coaching, honestly, the first couple steps. And then after that, they're kind of on their own and figuring it out. But it's interesting. My best runners do a really good job of keeping the torso down longer. And then my slower cats are just upright basically by the first couple steps. And Les has had a good cue for it of push yourself low, so that I'm pushing so hard forward that I can stay low because my foot is keeping me there, if that makes sense. But I thought that was a really good cue for that. And his other 2 points, and it's kind of the last things I'll say, at least for Les's things, was the projection piece, torso and hip projection. And then the negative step is what he called it, or the push backwards. So you're having good ground contact times and then really directing the forces horizontally, which again, being the 2 keys of acceleration for him. Then he gets into his drill categories, which again, overhead drills, some dribbles, wickets, flies, sprints, and then just kind of talked about that stuff a little bit, and then some stuff he's doing on the with some app and like recording kids and being like ranking kids and all this thing. It was pretty cool.
That is cool.
But yeah, then Joey G spoke after that, and his was I really liked his because it was a little more practical and applicable to my everyday life. I mean, don't get me wrong, the Les's stuff was really good, but Joey's was solid. And Chris, he kept saying to reference back to science and practice. So apparently we need to brush back up on that again. But nevertheless, he was just, his big message was making sure that you are training your athletes for their sport and actually getting them ready for it. And obviously that's through the lens of dealing with Division I football freaks and being able to prepare them accordingly. Gotten to having a layered approach is what he kind of framed it as, just going from general to specific, basically. And I really liked how he, when he broke down his weeks, how he aligned. I mean, it's stuff that we do anyway, as far as aligning my weight room work with my sprint work or my jumps or things like that, and trying to have similar ground contact times and goals of the workout. But he was labeling everything as either, rate of force development, peak force, stretch sorting cycle, all that stuff. But I liked how that was labeled because that just cleared up a lot of things. And like when I was texting you, Chris, because what I do now is I naturally kind of work from slow to fast during the week, of starting with acceleration and kind of ending with max velocity later in the week. But I have been pairing my essentially strength work with my max velo day, and then I'm doing strength work as well. My strength work as well on acceleration, which made sense. But he was just making the point that you really want to have your power stuff paired with your max velo day, because that's more rate of force development, stretch sorting cycle, so that it more aligns better with the weight room goal. And I think the strength is still good on those days. I think it really just depends. If I got a kid that's strong enough and can produce power, then yeah, we can do that. I mean, for me, I did some trap bar jumps and things like that this year. But I always did a weighted jump on the jump mat holding 10-pound dumbbells through the whole year. And I didn't change that weight at all. And I mostly was doing that to see if, are we jumping higher with the same weight, right? And I didn't change any of the dumbbell weight, and naturally the kids got up. And that was, obviously that's a little bit of some power work there, nothing crazy. But like I said, I was doing trap bar jumps as well and different things there. But I thought that was a pretty big takeaway on the weekly layout.
Yeah, I like that. And from James Smith's book, Applied Sprint Training, you could also think too, what's nice about pairing strength work on your acceleration focused day is you could also pair larger knee bend exercises on your acceleration day. And then for your power work on your max V day, you don't want as large ranges of motion, because it's kind of like your top end speed. So if you're doing your trap bar jumps, you could do them on your acceleration and your max V day, but on acceleration, maybe you reset on the ground every single time. And then for your max velocity day, they're just going into kind of a shallow dip and drive, and not resetting, coming all the way down on the floor. So that way you're kind of pairing your knee angle a little bit more, which I thought was brilliant in James's book. And that's why for me in hockey, I only have one max V day and I have 2 acceleration focused days, because hockey is an acceleration based sport. So I like to have more time with that larger knee angle
I like that.
Yeah, that's actually.
I don't have any trap bars here, but I would
really
love to
good.
do that.
So, along with that, Ross, tell us about your thoughts of your kids competing on the weekends, and how you might kind of rearrange your scheduling throughout the summer. Because I thought that was super interesting, and I know you put it out there for other people to kind of give feedback. So, what are you thinking with that?
The question of the century is what it is. I think
Yeah, yeah.
In Florida, it's unbelievable the amount of travel ball there is naturally. Like when over New Year's, or roughly like the December, January time, there was the most baseball players I've ever seen in my life walking around Fort Myers, Florida, because there's 2 baseball facilities down here, and like everybody's on vacation. They've got some huge travel ball tournaments and all that kind of stuff. But like, I know at least one of our football kids is going to play in 5 tournaments over summer, which,
Holy.
over an 8-week period, that's pretty high. And so,
Yeah.
And so nevertheless, I know with a layout of Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, I know that I'm going to make Monday the change of direction tempo day to help recover from the weekend for my travel ball kids. Now, don't get me wrong. Like, I got plenty of kids that don't do travel ball and they just do their one sport, but I got enough, soccer, basketball, baseball, all that stuff that are playing all the time, all summer. And if they're gonna, Coach Sparkman made a great point that if they're gonna miss, they're pretty much gonna miss Monday. Like, that's gonna be the big day that they miss the most, and they'll probably make it to Tuesday or Thursday. And I'm not really gonna measure anything on Mondays other than a readiness jump or some sort of jump. Like, I haven't done readiness jumps with my kids this year. I just took a bunch of jump data, but I didn't do like cold, hey, you're going to come in and do a hand on hip jump or do 3 of them before warming up or anything. But I'm going to do that over the summer, and I probably won't do anything with it unless I've got a kid that I had in class. It's more so just to see what happens, but let Monday be the change of direction tempo focus. Tuesday, I'm leaning toward max velocity on Tuesday, and then Wednesday being the acceleration day. Now, the caveat with that is I'm leaning toward max velo on Tuesday because, at least with football, because they also will be playing 7-on-7 on Wednesday mornings. So they're going to do all that kind of stuff. And I don't want to do Excel Tuesday to then let them go basically play a game, and then, oh, hey, we're going to do these long sprints the day after you just did 7-on-7 and covered a bunch of yards. And so I'd rather hit it before, and then come the next day for acceleration, I can turn down the intensity and all that kind of stuff as needed with the guys. And make that day an Excel day. The part that I'm trying to figure out right now is, because a barbell RDL for me is going to be a main movement, and it's not going to be an accessory.
Yep.
And so where do I put it to not mess up the max velo, to mess up the acceleration? Right. I mean, that's my big debate, because what I like to do is I like to put trap bar deadlift at the end of the week. Say, like, in a perfect world, I put that on Thursday. Now, that would also be aligning for me with max velocity. Now, since I have max velocity on Tuesday, do I put it on Tuesday and then I have my front squat or whatever on Thursday, or my RDL? Like, that's my big debate, is where can I put RDL in that week to not mess up all the other stuff?
My opinion is you put RDLs on Tuesday because of the knee angle. It's not a deep knee bend, and you're really having to focus on posture and like positions of the hips as you're hinging at the hips. So for me, I think you save your trap bar deadlift, your larger knee bend, your larger knee angle for your strength acceleration day on Thursday. And I say you go RDL, since it's definitely more posterior chain dominant as well, with your max velocity day, which should be more posterior chain dominant. Right? Like you're going to be hitting the hammies hard in an RDL. You're going to be hitting the hammies hard as you're trying to get a good fly time with the dasher. And then, yeah, with knee bend, knee angles as well.
I was thinking Tuesday, too, from a different angle, though, and that's that, some kids, hamstrings are just one of those things where if they're a little bit sore in the hamstrings, better earlier in the week than later in the week. And, if they're doing it often enough, they're going to be fine. But, hammies are always one of those weird ones that kids don't like when their hammies are sore. And I think it's going to throw off their whole career.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, do you worry about that going into my kids that are playing 7-on-7 football on Wednesdays?
No. They can figure it out.
I thought your 7-on-7 was Tuesday night.
No, it is the next day, Wednesday.
Oh.
And there's my problem.
If you dose everything properly,
yeah,
it shouldn't be too much of an issue. Like if you keep the volume and the intensity lower, allow them to adapt, then you could simultaneously either increase intensity or volume, or both, along with increasing sprint volume, and they should be okay. So like I'm doing something similar on Wednesdays as my big sprint day, and right now we're only doing 4 sprints. Right? Like I want their body to adapt. It's only May. I have until August. So I'm just slowly introducing, distance volume to them because I got time, because I don't want them to be sore, because then they feel like something bad's going to happen. But yeah, if you introduce it slowly, I don't see why you wouldn't be okay. Like these kids are in high school, right? They're in the prime of their life. They'll recover. They should anyway.
Yeah, and if they were in my class, they pretty much don't get sore from RDLs anymore. Like they just, it's what
Perfect.
we do. Now, if they were not in my class, which is a lot of them potentially, they might be a little sore. But yes, I mean the other little nugget from Joey G was making the point of hitting lactate work once a week due to their up tempo offense. And I thought that was just an interesting thing. And mentioning, again, feeling that, all right, I don't want to, kill them with it and bathe them in it, but just to have them touch it and feel it. So that way they've got that feeling there.
It makes sense. I mean, I agree, just from like the athlete perspective, right? Like they don't know what we know. And if you're giving them a little dose of that hard, they all love it. They hate it, but they think that's what they need. Right? Like no athlete is going to go do more low intensity aerobic work, but they're going to find the assault bike or push a really heavy sled, feel that burn, go do some CrossFit workout to make themselves feel crappy. And that's what they think they need. So might as well give a little I I don't do it, but like I get it. It makes sense.
Yeah.
I guess you could say
sense.
I do. I have them
It
holding split squats for 30 seconds. You're going to develop some acid there.
Yeah, I don't.
Did Joey G touch much on the weight room, or was it more geared towards like the on-field sprint stuff?
It was more categorizing things and saying, "Hey, the goal the goal of today is peak force, rate of force development, stretch shortening cycle. Whatever deceleration. Like that was not specifically on the movements. No, but it was just, hey, you categorize them, and this is the goal, and just match them up accordingly on those days.
Mm-hmm.
And the other little bit that was just, and it's totally and it's just specific to football, is that he was making the point that your big mids, which are tight ends, defensive ends, and your outside linebackers, have way more yardage than what you would think for their positions. He was saying that like they have like 7,200 game yards, which is a lot, and it's pretty much because a lot of those guys are on special teams, and they're running, and they're still running routes. Like an outside linebacker is chasing down people, a tight end is running routes, but they're also, again, special teams and doing those things. And so the game yardage does add up. But that was kind of the last little thing from him. Everything else was normal stuff. But again, it was just kind of putting it in a system and making sure everything aligns at the end of the day. And then the last speaker was obviously Tony Villani, and he's got all of his game speed and footwork stuff, and it's super interesting. And I think the biggest takeaway from Tony at the end of the day is just understanding what top speed is versus what game speed is, and understanding that your athletes, in order to effectively change direction, can't be running at top speed. Like they have to know and feel what the right speed is to change direction effectively, which just takes time. And that's kind of the gist of it and I've gone through his course and different things, and I like it a lot. But I do think it boils down to teaching the kids, one, leverages and putting them in the right positions, but two, you need to teach them, and you can do it through laser timers, you can do it through whatever, that this is the speed you need to hit in order to move the fastest, but to be able to also to change direction the fastest. And then he gets into the footwork and like the three ways to change direction. And if you have planned change of direction, then you should have perfect steps every time, right? If I'm a receiver, I should have the exact perfect step, and that, because I am the person that is determining where the DB is going. The DB is reacting off of me, and teaching. And then I guess before I go on that tangent, and it was something me and Joe brought up, Stokowski brought up when we're talking about this, is it's hard to teach this, I think, to high school kids. Not saying you can't do it. I think there is levels, though, in the fact that teaching a super athletic kid that can pick stuff up really well and fill leverages, after the fact they've learned a bunch of other habits to get to this point. Like if they just have awful change of direction mechanics, it's going to take time and they've got to want to learn it. But if I catch these kids before they ever get to that point, then heck yeah, like this is really good. And it's still really good to take the time to teach your high school kids. It just might take a little bit for it to hit. But I think, again, if you take the time to teach it, I think the biggest goal at the end of the day is getting them to understand that you can't be full bore if you're going to change direction.
Mm-hmm. I always think of stuff like that in terms of like hockey drills. Never played hockey, never coached it, but being the weight room guy, I always think like, okay, how is this going to transfer onto the ice? And so I was just thinking for your middle school kids, early high school, and like shoot, even high school, you could set up like a chase drill, right? So like one guy in front, one guy behind, like a yard, two behind, and then the leader has 3 or 4 options. You know, run 5 yards, run 7 yards, and then it's like a direct cut to the left, a direct cut to the right, something up to the left, something up to the right, whatever. And so the leader is going to choose where he goes. The chaser has to go hunt him down. And so set like cones, like narrow parameters of like, you have to run in this lane, this alley, right? So you come up to like a T, and then there's like a cone alley that they have to sprint down. And at the end, there's like a dummy that you tag or whatever. So that'll teach the leader like, oh, if I run too fast, I go outside the cones. If I run too fast, I can't change direction as quickly. And especially for the guy who has to react, you can't be going full tilt because then you're going to be off balance, or you won't be able to break down and change direction as well. So yeah, I think you could tease that out with like a fun game that makes it competitive and creates that maximal intent.
Yeah, I think too, with young athletes, before kids even get to high school or through high school, like talking about games, what better than playing multiple sports that all have different changes of direction, different styles of play, like lacrosse, soccer, the amount of different changes of direction and change of speed for those sports, tremendous. Baseball, not so much, but you're still running the bases, you're still chasing down balls, so there is change of direction, and you're obviously accelerating quite a bit.
Basketball
too, phenomenal. Mm-hmm. So if you get any combination of those sports, and then in high school you're playing football, well, boom, you're probably running pretty good.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, and it was teaching. I mean, and the thing that I like about Villani a lot is that he clearly is coaching it, and he's got a lot of applicable drills to teach. Every little thing that you're trying to do, and being able to teach a kid inside outside leverage. Where am I putting my feet? But at the end of the day, it's coming back to repetition with any of that stuff. It's going to come to repetition. And how are they going to react when they're not thinking about it? But it was good. Yeah. I mean, I was glad that I had done that course and whatnot, and being able to go through it. I mean, I'm definitely going to use bits and pieces of it and kind of install it and see how it goes, see how it progresses. Because the summer is really the only time I can do field work realistically. I can do stuff in a gym and do small footwork things, but the full bore field work, I can do it in the summer. But outside of that, I can't necessarily do it.
So kind of went through all the speakers' thoughts and kind of went back and forth, but give me your biggest, most practical kind of takeaway, Ross. You're driving home and you're fired up. All right, I'm gonna try this. I'm gonna do that. What was your big one?
I think it was Les's stuff of stacking the drills in in the combination of Tony's, let's say, atomic workout and that kind of natural progression in your warm up.
Yeah.
And then being able to understand why is it like that due to Les's pyramid of drills, and hey, this is why we need to do this first. Because quite frankly, before Les bringing it up, and Chris, even you telling me, I did not understand a bit about the overhead running it all. And just like asking and even asking, I've asked different coaches and different track coaches, and many a times they're like, it works core. I'm like, great. That doesn't help me understand why we're like doing that. Now, the fact that, all right, if we can't unlock it vertically, if I can't get the posture and whatnot, then I can't hold positions to horizontally accelerate. Now, that for me has made the most sense in the world. But before that, it's like, guys, this isn't helping me out whatsoever. But yeah, I would say less of stuff. And again, being able to build the drills, like the build up of, all right, I got the overhead drills to get posture. Dribbles was the next one. And then it was wickets to the flies to the full sprints. Like, again, just giving that little system and building up the front side mechanics and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, that was probably my biggest takeaway.
It was an awesome recap. I'm sure
that's a good one.
I'm sure as we continue these sessions, more you're going to be able to unload a little bit more for us. But
yeah, considering next week is week 1, so we're gonna see how it goes. We're gonna see how it goes.
It'll be great.
Gonna give the classic comeback. I need to change everything.
Yeah. Yes. Gotta change everything.
Yeah.
Awesome.
No, that's really good. Blair, any other questions or thoughts for Ross here, recapping the clinic or anything we've talked about?
No, I think we can wrap it up there. I think I don't have anything else. And I don't know, what are we, an hour in here? I think we're good.
A little bit. Hour, 12 minutes.
Oh, yeah. Just getting started. Well, hey, fellas, that was a good one. Ross, thanks for sacrificing your time for our learning and listening pleasure here. And hopefully we'll have some more good recaps of different clinics and seminars that we all get to go to as well.
Least I can do, baby.
Thank you, gentlemen.